this meeting of the North Kings County School Committee. And if I could have everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is to our rear. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes.
Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
All right. Yeah, that's fine.
Mr. Blasbar?
Here.
Mrs. Hoskins? Here. Mr. Jones? Mrs. McGovern? Ms. Stevens? Here. Ms. Schott? Here. And Student Representative?
Here.
Thanks.
Thank you. And if you could please call the calendar.
Tuesday, February 7th, 2017, there will be a school committee budget meeting at 7 p.m. Tuesday, February 14th is a school committee business meeting at 7. Friday, February 17th is a professional day, and there's no school for students. Monday, February 20th is President's Day, and schools and offices are closed. And Tuesday, February 21st is a school committee business meeting at 7.
Thank you. I don't see anyone for citizens' comments. Oh, I jumped for a second, sorry. We have an item on our agenda for presentations recognitions from the Rhode Island Association of School Committees. The individual from the Association of School Committees was not able to attend this evening, so we're going to put that off to another time. Again, no citizens' comments. Any other presentations or recognitions? Next item are routine items. If I could have a motion to seal the executive session minutes of January 24th, 2017.
So moved. Second.
Second, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those are sealed, and I can disclose that we did not take any votes in the executive session this evening. Next are the consent agenda. I'll start with a couple things. One is I'm going to exempt D1 and also E. Any other members have anything that they'd like to exempt for discussion?
Can I just make a comment about F?
We should exempt it. And we'll make
Exempt it.
any comments as we like. Yep. Okay. Any other? Okay.
Recommend
G.
G. Oh, yeah, okay, sorry, yep, and we will also exempt G, sorry.
Not to be presumptuous.
You are? I intended to. So if I could have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of items D1, E, F, and G.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So the first item that was exempted is item D1. The administration has asked one of the individuals we need to remove from the approval, and that is Alexandra Feldman. So if I could get a motion to approve the remaining names on item D1 with the exception of Alexandra Feldman.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. Next is item E. I'm going to ask for a motion to table that item because we didn't have the presentation today, so I don't want to take any action on that. If I could have a motion to table that for a later meeting.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. That is unanimous. Next is item F.
I'm just excited that CLAC is back and up and running, and that the members are really involved and excited. So, for the appointing of the committee members, and I'm really excited about it. So that's all I want to say.
As am I. We have a good list, and it's nice to see. So, and I have a motion to approve item F, the appointment of CLAC members.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Next is item G. We have the school calendar proposal from the superintendent. There are two options there for different vacations. So Dr. Shea, if you want to take the floor. And
this year's school calendar, this now is for the 2017-18 school year. A few years ago, we had a survey, and one of the choices that people picked on that survey was to have school begin after Labor Day. And as it turned out, the following year, Labor Day was about as late as you could possibly get it, and a lot of people came back with the complaint, well, if we had said beginning of September, probably would have been better. What they didn't want was to start in August. So we have put the start date on September 1st. That gets us to Friday. The other reason that it's good to start at that point, for AP students, their test is at a particular date no matter what. It's not kind of contingent upon where you are in the school year, so it does buy them a little bit more school time to prepare for their testing. So high school also requested to go to September 1st. So that's changed here. But the other part is when we did that that calendar originally, we had the vacation week traditionally where it falls in April. We went from 2 vacations to 1. We kept the April vacation. And we did that mostly because in March, that was when NECAP testing was. Now NECAP is PARC. PARC testing is late April and early May. And, people, I don't have any hard survey of this, but a lot of people have talked about, wouldn't it be better and kind of more central in the second semester to have the vacation week fall in the middle of March, which is generally around where colleges will do that. So I would recommend that we ask the community that keep the survey simple. Where would you prefer that week? Would you prefer it in April or would you prefer it in March? And that's the entire survey. We want to keep surveys clean and without much, interpretation. Because you can fall into, well, that's not really what it meant, and how about this choice, and all that kind of thing. So, but other than that, we seem to have a pretty good fit on, where everything seems to be falling, and all of that sort of thing. So, I don't know if anyone has any questions.
I do. Have you talked to other superintendents about whether or not they are interested in doing the March break? I'm just curious.
I know.
Families who have more than one.
I know there are other communities that do it.
Okay.
The problem is, when we went from 2 to 1, there seemed to be a lot of districts going that way. I think at the time there were already 7, and many were saying they were talking about it. There's probably a third to a half of the districts right now that have the 1 week, and the other half have 2.
Right.
And with the 1 week, some of them are in March and some of them are in April. So we're getting away from that one universal state calendar. The superintendent's organization is the organization that kind of publishes a recommendation. And this year they haven't even done that because everyone's in so many different places. It's hard to just put one in mind. So so this is kind of where we are in honoring what our constituents have told us they would like to see in the past, in recent past, and I think the next step is to poll them on what they would prefer about where the 1 week should go. Yeah.
So your handbook?
Yeah, so with a lot of content-intensive AP classes I've taken, like history classes, teachers have really struggled to get all the content in, and that made it so that we'd have to kind of just do a lot of stuff in the winter to prepare for the exam and kind of just cram. So I know that this year, at least having that extra week in the beginning of the year really helped us, because there's been more time for teachers to spread the material out instead of crammed in right before the exam, so that helped this year.
My concern, and I know we talked about this briefly in your office in our agenda meeting, but I worry about starting on a Friday before a long weekend. I just see that as a potential inconvenience for any number of travel plans, and then just starting on a Friday seems, I know the first day of school is always kind of a whatever day anyway, but to have it on a Monday before a long weekend seems even a little more disruptive. That's my personal opinion. Other than that, with respect to whether we do, the addition either in the March or the April, I'm very willing to see what the survey has to say. That's just my 2 cents.
And I'm in complete agreement with that Friday before is just,
Okay.
And I don't think,
Well, I can come
I
back
don't think a
with-
day makes much difference in the AP either.
Right.
Yeah. And, a couple of points to make in response to that. I agree with you. 1 day is not in some years, starting in September 1st,
And then I'd be much more.
may matter
Yeah,
a lot.
that's right.
But also, there is someone out there with some legislation in the State House to say they want all districts to start after Labor Day, which I would love. I would love for the state to tell us what the school calendar is, because this is not easy, and it's always us that kinds of, gets in the middle of something that, doesn't really need to be a debate, But it is what it is. So I can come back with, starting on the 5th, and, and coming back with the survey results on the vacation.
So we don't need to take action on
That's
this
the pleasure of the
tonight.
committee. Okay, so,
Any other comments on the school calendar? Next items are unfinished business. Anything on the 2016-17 school budget?
No, sir.
Thank you. Next is our fiscal year 18 superintendent's preliminary budget. Anyone have any comments on that? I know we're all still digesting and crunching numbers and, no? I'll just say what I always say, which is we need to try to get some numbers to the administration and questions and everything. I encourage that everyone meet with Mrs. King and Dr. Auger, even outside of meetings, so that we can get our questions answered, crunch numbers, give Mrs. King an opportunity to respond. Sometimes it's inevitable that at that last meeting, something comes up and she has to make a quick number crunch on her computer, but we try to get questions to her in advance so that we're not, I know I would not have to track it or something else like that, 2 seconds notice. So we'll move on. Next is CIP, existing bond and future bond, capital improvement plan update.
a couple of things, and Mrs. King has a lot to say here on this one too. We met with the town council last night over the HVAC issue. We were requesting $700,000 from them. We had just finished a conversation with the fire chief about extra staff there, and feeling pinch in terms of their own resources, and they did come through for us with $500,000, and that's that we look to our own resources to find the rest. So we're at a point now where we would put out an RFP and see what where that takes us, and hopefully we can get close to everything that we need for that HVAC project, because it's something we need their approval on this now, so we can be prepared to go through the whole RFP process and have the crews get all the supplies they need, so they're ready for the summer construction. So it's not something that we can do while school is in session. The other issue that we need to be thinking about is we just had a presentation on the athletic field. Mr. Hague is here tonight. If there are any more questions on that particular item, but and this is not anything up for a vote, but we should be thinking in terms of what the school committee would be looking to put forward to address the concerns of the track, tennis courts, and turf, and what we would request from the town council. There's already a $700,000 request for the track to them that we would ask that they take up at the end of the spring with the regular budget cycle. And we maybe have some different ideas about how much we would expect to be taken care of privately, to take care of the whole job. And if all that private money doesn't come in, then what would we do? What projects would we address first? It's clear that the track, Mr. Hague, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to be the highest priority with the tennis courts. But that's not to say that there's certainly a very big need for that turf as well. So I'd like to get the whole project done.
It's a Roland
The best version of this with the safest turf, and we're looking in the neighborhood of $2.3 million. So, Mrs. King, I don't know if you could talk about our fund balance and
Yeah,
what's available.
Yeah, a couple things. So first of all, I personally would like to say thank you to Council President Welch and Councilman Maloney for their support last night. They did move us up on the agenda, and they were very supportive. And Mr. Welch has been on our facilities subcommittee before, so he's well aware of the issues. So they were very supportive. So that went well. So what we did, I can't remember the meeting. I think it was back in November. The school committee actually approved for the high school heating ventilation project for us to contract with our architect and the commissioning agent. We're required to have a commissioning agent by RIDE to contract up until the point we actually put the bid out on the street. So what I need to do in 2 weeks is get approval from you for the rest of their contract to finish it all the way through. They will put it all out to bid. There'll be pre-bid conferences, and then probably sometime in April, late April or early May, the contractor's bid will come to you for approval. What I am working with the architect on is if there's something that he can word the RFP that could maybe be done at a later time, just in case the bids come in too much higher than $500,000 or $700,000, and we don't have the funds to be able to do it. Ideally, I want to finish it and get it done because we have this whole system that's got parts done to it. So I think we'll be relatively okay, but the remaining estimate on that project is about $700,000. And we asked for $700,000 and we were able to get $500,000, and that's great. But just as a little bit of a warning, you don't know until you get your bids. So that'll come forward. In terms of our fund balance currently stands at $2 million. The past practice of the school committee has been that we maintain 2% of our general fund operating budget for contingency. That's 2% of nearly $64 million, so you're getting pretty close to $1.3 million is what you would be saving. That means you only have about $700,000, and wherever we think we're running for this year in your fund balance, and this year's tight. It's always tight. So the issue is that we have, let's say we have $700,000 unless you choose to go below that $1.3 million. We have $700,000. We probably are going to need another $100,000 to $200,000 for the electrical work that is being planned that you will be voting on March 14th. So that's at 3 of the schools. Very extensive electrical work. We have about $250,000 from the town left over that's not part of that $2 million, but we might have to kick in another $100,000 or so. Okay. We have a discussion that we started about an owner's project manager for a long-term infrastructure plan. That's probably $100,000. Okay, but we don't know that because we don't have the RFP out there that's been discussed. We have what we just talked about, maybe up to $200,000 on the HVAC system. And I have a myriad of other things that we really need to decide what we're bidding and what we're not bidding. I can't just bid everything because, one, it's an intensive amount of work getting the bids together and paying the architect to assist with some of them. Two, if you don't think you're going to move forward with the project, you can't just bid everything because it takes a lot for vendors to bid things. There's pre-bid conferences, they take a lot of time. But there are several items that really need to be looked at. So we're running short on the funds. So you guys are going to have to decide if you want to go below that $1.3 million threshold. We have not done that in the 5 years that I've worked here. So there's always something with capital. Dr. O'Jay and I last night did indicate to the town council that we had a separate request at budget time. We had made about a $2.4 million request at budget time. But if we get any of that funding in May, you can't likely get any significant work done. It's too late to plan it. The rules around construction is any projects that's over $500,000, whether RIDE is paying housing aid, which they're not on any of these items, but even if they are not, the whole process needs to go through RIDE. You need to do the schematic design documents, construction documents, anything over $500,000. So a lot of these projects, there are a lot of steps that you need to go through in order to get them approved and get them moving. So with a very short time frame, you know, finding out in May if you get funds, there's very little that you would be able to do at that point. But we can, work, it would give us more time to work forward for the following summer. And there's a lot of plans behind the scenes. Some staff are going to have to be moved temporarily. We're going to have to move some programs over the summer. We've been through this rodeo several times, but there is just a lot that needs to be done behind the scenes. And then the last item that we had hoped was going to be on the town council agenda, but they weren't able to get what they needed, was we had discussed that there's $400,000 remaining on an old 2004 bond issuance. And we would like to use that money for Fishing Cove floor covering. Of course, that would have to come to your approval, bidding and everything. But we need town council approval first to say that, yes, you can use those funds. It was communicated to us by the town manager that they were not able to get the bond council's resolution on the wording of what that should be in time. So Dr. Ajay and I are hoping that at their next meeting, they'll be able to do that so we can get that planned.
Where's the
as well.
schools listed on that bond?
Excuse me, what are schools? Forest Park, Fishing Cove, Woodford Elementary School, which is now closed, and Woodford Middle School.
I want to thank the town council for approving not the whole request, but a good portion of our request with respect to the HVAC. And it's really nice to see a renewed commitment from them to assisting us with our long-term capital needs. And part of that is as the budget process goes on, as Mrs. King mentioned, we prior to you two being on the committee, we sat, deliberated, and had a request. This all comes down to the need for a consistent capital funding source for the school department. And without having had that over the past few years, we're forced to rely on the happenstance of the surplus in any given year in order to be able to fund any of these types of projects. And that's not a reliable way to deal with any of this. We did come up with a list of what we consider to be the largest projects, crunched some numbers, and did a request that the town council would give us funding of, as you mentioned, $2.4 million as a start towards a continuous capital fund. What we really need is essentially, aside from operating, it can't come out of operating as happened last year. The funds we have for operating, we need for operating. We need a sort of revolving capital improvement budget, that a capital improvement fund, which we then can make a budget with and use those funds each year for the things that are always going to need to be done.
So does that request, does that sort of get attached to that 4% capital we have, or is that separate from that?
Well, it depends on how they fund it.
Well,
if it's annual, it really is.
It goes with the budget, but it's not part of the general operating budget. It's totally separate from that.
So we can't increase 4%?
No.
Okay.
So my understanding, Michael probably knows, Attorney Pollard probably knows, the law says that the school committee cannot request more than 4%. I didn't see anywhere where it said the town couldn't give you more than 4%. But the capital is completely separate. That's not part of that 4% at any time.
Okay, I see. So
Yep.
we can essentially,
It's a
Gary,
capital
get
budget.
4% in the operating and then unlimited.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And keep in mind that the town has its own rules whereby if they're using tax levy money to fund this, they have their own limits imposed by state law that they have to meet. So it gets really complicated, and frankly, the system, as set forth by the legislature, it's been, I don't remember how many years the tax levy cap's been in effect, but it has created these kinds of budget crunches that make it very difficult to do increases, even if you might need to have them. So hopefully the council will take a good look at our capital needs. They have capital needs of their own, which we all know. So it's, there's only so much that we can do. With respect to, I'll just make a couple comments. With respect to the stadium and sports complex, I think it's clear that we need to somehow find the funds to, at a minimum, get the track and tennis courts fixed. I mean, they're in deplorable condition. It has to get done. I was very happy to see a real encompassing proposal that Mr. Hagan had brought before us at our previous meeting. Getting funding for all of those items, I would love to see it. I don't know how we're going to be able to do much more than the track and the tennis courts, though, if we can be creative and have the support of the council, I'd love to move forward with at least some of those other items. But we really need to make a push, for those two things, because they really need to get fixed. Anyone else have any comments on?
I just had another question too regarding the contingency that you mentioned, the 2%. So have we ever had to dip into that? And if we have, then for what?
The
1.3 million?
No, in the 5 years that I've been here, we have maintained that 2% cushion. We have not gone below that. Now, I can tell you we've had some better years. We've had some, in terms of surpluses, we've had some money that we've gotten back from the trust in terms of reserves, and that was a whole other complicated thing. So we were able to do quite a few other, capital things. But the policy since I've been, the precedent, I guess, or the practice, I'm sorry, there's no written policy. The practice since I've been here is that we haven't dipped below that 2%. And we have not used fund balance for anything but one-time non-recurring items. So what that means is we have not taken fund balance and paid for a staff member, because that just sets you up for a structural problem going forward, because you always have to, figure that out going forward. So it's been your one-time items, possibly even legal settlements, if we've done consulting work, any of the capital work, and mostly that's where the money's going.
So my question is if you had knowledge that you would have a funding source from the town, would you feel more comfortable dipping into that fund balance or making it not a 2% practice? I'm just curious, because in the past they haven't funded capital projects.
I think there would need to be an agreement with the town, maybe a charter item where the town's surplus, the school's surplus. We had some clear guidelines on what's available, within that. The other things that could possibly occur, you could have a hurricane come through. All of a sudden, you need to very quickly address a new roof, a gymnasium, or something along those lines. And that's where that money where you have it ready to go while you're waiting for FEMA to come through with some aid, that kind of thing can help. Or, an unexpected law settlement, or, so we've been very careful, and we haven't had to go that low, but we've had a couple of points too where we've been able to have some surplus money available to us for other things, and so it hasn't really forced us to go there. But we can just line up the number of items that we'd like to spend this money on right now, and it doesn't come up to $2 million. It comes up to a lot more than that. So and I've mentioned this a bunch of times before, but I think way back, maybe 20 years or so, there was this idea that at the time, $500,000 would go to the school department on a regular basis. I think it was ever a hard and fast rule. It was more of a habit that quickly ended the first time. It was a tough budget year, and never came back. And now that a reasonable number is probably around $2 million a year for that kind of item.
Yeah.
So and it's hard to get everybody wrapped around that kind of a number, given everything else that's going on. So.
And I'll just add, last year we were given $500,000 allocation for capital projects. That was a step in the right direction, but that was taken out of operating. So hopefully that type of thing doesn't happen. That was the first time in a long time that there was a specific allocation from the town council for school capital projects. I can tell you, students, that I can recall way prior to my being on the committee, when Dr. Thornton was the superintendent, there was a budget year where the school committee actually did what Mrs. King is saying we should never do, and took a portion of the capital reserve and used it for operating, which did that year create a structural deficit. And I'll tell you, I personally would not potentially proposal to do that. Well, obviously, because just the reality is if you do that, then you've now committed to spending that money every year, and then the following year that money is not there, and now you've got twice the problem. Okay, anything else on those items? Next, we have an updated NASDAQ demographic and enrollment study.
This is posted on the district website if anyone would like to look at it. We regularly get information from NASDAQ, New England School Demographics, something. I can't remember the whole name, but they're a very influential organization based in Marlborough, Mass, and they service a lot of school departments around the country, mainly in New England, and help with this kind of work. And we have a presentation from John Kennedy, is his name, who came and did a very extensive presentation back in April. And their regular reports to us had indicated that the thinking was that we would be looking 10 years from now to be going from about 4,000 kids, which is what we have now, to about 3,200. In April, after doing a lot of work and looking at the building that's going on in the community and different, doing, kind of taking more of a deep dive, which is what we asked them to do into this issue, they came back with the number 3,600 in 10 years, but kind of gradually, going downward a little bit. Well, the funny thing that happened right after their report, they did the report in April, all over the summer, we went up by significantly, 60 or 70 students, mainly due to an uptick at kindergarten level, because now the full K had kicked in, but also there was a significant uptick at the high school as well. So we asked them to look at it again, and so they've done more work, and that is what has come back. And now the projection is that they figure we will likely stay flat in the next 10 years. That will be roughly between 3,900 and 4,000 students 10 years from now. They always give the caveat that they feel better about their projections the tighter the zone. 10 years out, there's a lot of things that could happen in any community and any economy and, everything that goes along with it. But given the jobs that are coming into North Kingstown, the building that's going on in North Kingstown, they feel confident that we would be looking at keeping our enrollment pretty much steady for the next 10 years. So that it is what it is. We asked for the information in regards to a long-term infrastructure project, and we are, going to continue to look into that project and come back to you in the next few months with some more information on that. But it's good to have this information to know, what we are planning for the long term.
Thank you. Next item is our school committee meeting calendar for the next year. I'd like to give Mr. McGovern, Mr. Jones, an opportunity to weigh in on this. So I don't want to take a vote tonight, and we can put this off at least one more meeting before we set it. But if you have any comments or any particular dates that look like, if something comes up, it comes up. But if you know that there's a conflict with any particular school committee meeting dates, if you could get those to Amy, and then she can disseminate those and we can adjust accordingly. So that's the end of new business. There are a couple reports in our agenda packet. I don't know if anyone had anything that they wanted to discuss regarding the enrollment data reports, disposal notification, or financials. If anyone had any comments to those, we've reached the end of our agenda, and I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.